Hey guys, Brock Doherty here. I'm going to be talking to you guys. I'm going to give you guys my TED Talk for PL 300 on leadership, and the quality in leadership that I look to most is resiliency. Why do I look into resiliency? I feel that leaders in leadership is always put into a position where you need to overcome some sort of adversity. And when I think of adversity, I think of, a quote I can't remember where, I think I read it, but it was from Ronald Reagan, and it said the greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. He's the one that gets the people to do the greatest things. And that's overcoming adversity right there. I think that's a great example of that. Immediately when that comes to mind, I think of, I'm a Patriots fan, but I think of the Super Bowl 2 years ago when the New England Patriots played the Atlanta Falcons. They were down 25-3, 24-3 in the end of the third quarter. And right there, everyone thought, hey, game's over. The Atlanta Falcons have it. Tom Brady's not going to get his fifth ring. Sure enough, somehow Tom Brady was able to lead the New England Patriots back to another Super Bowl and win the game in overtime. Resiliency is made up of 4 traits: self-awareness, self-regulation, optimism, and mental agility. There's others listed that people think, hey, this is the key to resiliency. These are the 4 that I've read and I've always felt that are necessary to have resiliency. First trait in resiliency, self-awareness, is by being able to be aware of your thinking. Sounds kind of weird, but by being able to understand what you're thinking and what's going on in a situation, you'll be able to kind of analyze the situation better. You'll have a better feel for what is going on and what kind of actions you should be taking. The next one, self-regulation, is by being able to regulate your emotions, which is very important because right away, if you lose control of your emotions, you can lose control of those below you. And a memory that comes to mind is this last year in the NBA Finals. LeBron James had a meltdown on the sideline after a player was dribbling out the clock when they were tied instead of putting up a layup. And LeBron James's meltdown had a ripple effect of affecting how the overtime went. I believe that's how it happened. Other people may not think so, but instead of, embracing the player who, ran out the clock and saying, hey, you should have put up a shot, hey, don't worry about it, it's okay. By letting his emotions get the best of him, and it ultimately affected how players played as well. Which leads me to my next point, is optimism. And when I think of optimism, I think of actually a player this year in the NFL, James Conner. If you don't know who he is, look him up. His story is incredible. He was one of the top running backs in college his freshman and sophomore year. Many were expecting him to be a first-round pick, maybe even a Heisman winner. And sadly, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. And there's a happy end to the story, but regardless, he had cancer and he was battling it. Many thought, hey, this is the end of his career. What a shame. This is such a sad story. Just another sad story. James Conner was strong enough and he was optimistic enough to be positive and be like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna make a comeback. I'm gonna be able to be back on the football field. I'm gonna play again. I'm guaranteed. He made that promise to himself and to others and his fans. Sure enough, his senior year, he was back on the field, had an incredible season, was drafted in one of the later rounds. NFL teams weren't too sure because of his cancer. And, here he is now, his second year in the NFL, is a starting running back. His first 2 games, he's played incredible, has about 200 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns through 2 weeks. Some say, hey, maybe a fluke, but, I've always told once is a fluke, 2's a trend. He's on the right path and, he's playing well. And, that's a solid case of optimism right there. Being positive when everything else looks negative. My favorite part of resiliency is the aspect of mental agility. To be able to see the bigger picture in a situation. Many think, hey, there's only one way to solve an issue. They got the blinders on, they got tunnel vision. And by being able to be mentally, to have mental agility in a situation when, you're facing adversity is important. Because there's no one way to solve any issue. Just like math, there's multiple ways to get to 2. It could be 1 + 1, 3 - 1, 2 × 1. It's the same kind of concept. There's different ways to approach a situation and seeing each one as its benefits. for mental agility, I think of the generals from World War II, Dwight D. Eisenhower, General Patton, Douglas MacArthur. They were put up to an extremely difficult task. They had to not only think of, our own country's needs, they needed to think of the world's needs as well. For the first time, people were fighting not only for, their own country, they're fighting for other countries as well. And that can be extremely difficult because at the end of the day, most people want to look at their own selfish needs. But, sometimes there's, times where you need to look at what's best for everyone. And that's really the definition of mental agility. By looking at the bigger picture, seeing what's more important in life. Is it more important for, myself to have what I want, or is it more important for have my team and have them be successful? And that's really the crucial part in mental agility, and which is why I think it is the foundation, the base of resiliency. If you're able to see the bigger picture in things, you'll be able to have great success. You might be asking, like, hey, how do I get some resiliency? It's not like you can just go to the local store and buy some resiliency. It's just not going to happen that way. You got to work on it. It's something you can develop. It's also something, people are born with, being nurtured by your parents and being raised a certain way. You may be ahead of the curve, whatnot. But, I think resiliency, as the older you get, actually, prepares you better to develop it. Just because I think the older you get, the more difficult situations you're put in, especially at a younger age. I feel like, 15 to like 30, because those are the years where you're a young adult, you're really starting to make your own decisions. You're starting to be put in leadership positions for the first time. Here at West Point, it's the first time I've really been in peer-to-peer leadership where I've had to tell my buddies, like, hey man, you're doing something wrong. Like, that's not right. Like, better than that. You shouldn't be doing that. And then them looking me in the eyes, be like, dude, come on, who cares? Like, what's it matter? Like, there's a reason to it. There's a rhyme and reason for everything we do here. And it's important to make sure that when you're in a situation like that you look at the 4 things that I dove into earlier. Self-awareness, self-regulation, optimism, and mental agility. If you break things down like that, even if you had to take your time, assessing a situation and your feelings and what you're thinking, that's important. Making sure that you control your emotions and not let your emotions get the best of you. When someone snaps at you or tells you to do something, even if it's stupid, making sure that you stay grounded and, keep your emotions in control. Optimism, be positive about it. Find a way to, turn a negative into a positive because, people respond well to that. No one wants to be around someone who's, very pessimistic. Finally, mental agility, being flexible with whatever situation you're given. Being able to look at it from different lenses and look at the bigger picture. Hey, what are we trying to accomplish here? What's our end goal? Keep that in mind when you're looking at it. Hey guys, thanks again for tuning in and checking out my TED Talk. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed my lesson on resiliency and the importance to it for leadership.